Greatest LeBron James fights of all time. LeBron James isn't known as a fighter. He isn't known for starting drama. Instead, he's known for his skill set, passion, drive, and work ethic when it comes to the game of basketball. James has had a couple of altercations in the NBA throughout his time in the league. Most of those have been overblown and exaggerated. It's just the competitive spirit of other players trying to get an edge against the greatest basketball player in this generation. James isn't usually the one to start fights on the court, but if he's involved, he'll make sure to stand up for himself and his teammates. He's always been known as one of the better locker room guys when it comes to superstars of the league. Keep watching to see the greatest LeBron James fights of all time. Stanley Johnson. In 2016, LeBron James got into it with former Pistons forward Stanley Johnson. LeBron was dominating in this 2016 playoff series. James scored 22 points and 11 assists against the Pistons in Game 1. Then in Game 2, LeBron dropped 27 points on just 18 shots in a 17-point Cavaliers win. The Cavs took the first two games of the series. Still, Stanley Johnson didn't see it that way. Stanley Johnson thought that he had James right where he wanted him. This wasn't the case at all, and Johnson made a fool of himself. After the second game, Johnson said, "I'm definitely in his head, that's for sure. The Cavaliers defeated the Pistons 107-90 in Game 2 before Johnson made those remarks. Johnson continued his rant like he was the superstar. "He laces his shoes up the same way I lace my shoes up," he said. "He has to come out there and compete and make his shots. He doesn't come prepared. That's the NBA. Anybody and everybody can get busted any night. From the last guy on the bench to the first guy out. He's going to have to strap his shoes in every night tight, because I'm going to strap my shoes in every night tight." The newspaper enjoyed this as Johnson continued to speak insanity. "He jabbers," Johnson said of James. "He moves his mouth sometimes. Their whole team does. Kind of like their little cheerleaders on the bench. Every time you walk in the right corner, they're always saying something like they're playing basketball, like they're actually in the game. There's only 7 or 8 players who play. I don't see why the other players are talking. They might as well just be in the stands, in my opinion." After the newspapers and reports came out, the Pistons likely asked Stanley to clarify his comments. Johnson clarified, but wouldn't take back what he said. Per ESPN, after those first two games, LeBron was 13 for 15 from the field when Johnson was his primary defender. Facts are facts, Stanley. LeBron was never rattled by Stanley Johnson, and probably didn't read the comments after the first time. Some players read those comments as motivation, but LeBron didn't even need to do that. He just had to know that he was dominating Johnson offensively. Obviously, he wasn't the first player to trash LeBron in a playoff series, but he's also not the first one to look extremely stupid making comments about him being the same as LeBron. LeBron is the greatest of this generation. DeShawn Stevenson. It's hard to believe right now, but the Wizards were one of LeBron's toughest matchups when he joined the NBA. In 2006, LeBron's Cavaliers beat Washington in a hard-fought 6-game series, where the Cavs won Game 5 and Game 6 by just 1 point in overtime. In the next season's playoffs, the teams match up again. This time, LeBron swept a limited Wizards group that was without their two best players, Caron Butler and Gilbert Arenas. In 2008, the teams had to play each other again. This time, DeShawn Stevenson wasn't happy about it. During the season, the Cavs played the Wizards in March, where the Wizards led the Cavs by 2 points in a tight game. Stevenson was defending James on the final possession. Stevenson got the stop, as James missed his 3-point attempt. After the game, Stevenson stated his opinions about James. "He's overrated," Stevenson said, "and you can say I said that." The media laughed, so he had to say it again and get a couple of straight faces. Stevenson said, "If you look at the games and what's going on, I know when I go to sleep, I know we have to play LeBron James. When I go to sleep and know we have to play the Lakers, I know it's going to be a long night. It's the difference between the Kobes and LeBrons. Not saying he will never get there, but that's what I'm saying." When James was asked to respond to Stevenson, he said he wouldn't respond to the criticism. He made the comparison of himself and Stephenson to Jay-Z saying something bad about Soulja Boy. James was basically saying that Jay-Z was a legend of hip-hop, and that Soulja Boy had just one song and fell off just because the song had a cool dance. Once Stephenson heard those comments, he responded, "Hey, maybe a nobody jokester can win." It wasn't even close. LeBron scored 30 points 4 times and had a 27-point triple-double in Game 6 to seal the deal. Of course, after the season was over, Jay-Z recorded a diss cover of Too Short's "Blow the Whistle." Jay-Z defended LeBron and performed it at a Washington nightclub where Caron Butler was there. Butler left the club because he felt disrespected, but he only had Stephenson to thank for the mess. Brandon Jennings. In 2012-2013, the Milwaukee Bucks were the 8th seed in the NBA playoffs. As a number 8 seed, the Bucks were giant underdogs facing LeBron James and the Miami Heat. The Heat didn't just have LeBron, but also had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. It's very rare when we see an 8 seed defeat a 1 seed. However, Brandon Jennings of the Bucks came into the series thinking the Bucks would win the series. I'm real confident. I'm sure everybody is writing us off, but I see us winning the series in 6. Jennings then doubled down on the comments in an interview with TNT. After those comments, the Heat went up 2-0 in the series. Jennings said, "I still said 6," when being interviewed by Craig Sager. So we'll see what happens. Might take a little longer. LeBron never responded to Jennings' stupidity. His actions on the floor did all the talking as the Heat won the series 4-0 and got the sweep of Milwaukee and Jennings. Lance Stephenson. Don't get Lance and DeShawn mixed up. Lance Stephenson is highly regarded as the most annoying individual in the NBA. He's been annoying since the day he came into the league. In 2012, in his sophomore season, Lance came off the bench and tried to get under LeBron's skin. Stephenson made a choking gesture from the bench after LeBron missed a free throw. This is what he had to say about it. "I try to talk to other players, but in a good way. Get them off their game a little bit, but not being disrespectful. I just got out of hand one time, and I'll never do it again." LeBron knew this wouldn't be the last time Stephenson would do this. James responded, "Lance Stephenson? You want a quote about Lance Stephenson?" James said after practice. "I'm not even going to give him the time. Knock it off." Nobody knew this at the time, but later it was reported that Indiana Pacers forward Danny Granger said that the Heat were searching for Stephenson in the locker room after the game. Miami Heat veteran Juwan Howard apparently confronted Stephenson on the court before the next game. Both of those players were bench warmers throughout the season. Stephenson started to become a larger asset to the Pacers during their solid playoff runs. He became the guy the Pacers would assign to guard LeBron. You know where this is going. One of the most iconic things to ever happen to LeBron was when Lance Stephenson blew in LeBron James' ear. Nobody will be allowed to do that in the 2020 playoffs, that's for sure. Anyway, Steven tried to get into James' head by blowing air in his face. Like everyone else, it didn't rattle LeBron. Instead, the Heat would end the series in the next game with a 25-point win. Joakim Noah. Former Chicago Bulls forward Joakim Noah and Cleveland Cavaliers star LeBron James have always had a history of not liking each other when playing on the court against each other. One of the craziest moments between these two was in 2010, when Noah and James had words due to James dancing on the sideline during the game. On April 19, 2010, Noah made comments about James' hometown of Cleveland that weren't the nicest. "Cleveland really sucks. I don't know about this place, man," Noah said in an interview with TNT. "I just stayed in my hotel room. Every time I look out my windows, it's pretty depressing here, man. It's bad. It's bad. No going out in Cleveland, man. It's all factories." When asked if he regretted the comments, Noah responded, "Not at all." Then further enraged Cavs fans. "You think Cleveland's cool?" Noah said. "I've never heard anybody say, 'I'm going to Cleveland on vacation.' What's so good about Cleveland?" The history between these two continued into Game 2 of the 2013 NBA playoffs. Noah and James received double technicals after an offensive foul by James led to more arguing and bickering. James has never been one to argue and get in fights on the court. Other players like Noah certainly egg him on though. In a 2014 interview, James had nothing but nice comments to say about Noah. Sometimes when players are on the court, competitive spirit comes out. It doesn't mean they actually hate each other off the court. Enes Cantor. Everyone remembers this moment between Cantor and LeBron. After his comments, a former teammate of New York Knicks center Enes Cantor warned him not to mess with the King. Cantor told ESPN, "One texted me just to say, I'm not going to say who, but he texted me, 'You're about to get 50 dropped on you, boy.' I responded something back, but I'm not going to say what it is." Cantor is very social media savvy and trolled James with a tweet following Oklahoma City's 148-124 victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers. In a November meeting between James and Cantor, they got into it. "I don't care who you are," Cantor said of James at the time per Newsday. "What do you call yourself? King, queen, princess? Whatever you are, we're gonna fight. Nobody out there is gonna punk us." James responded per ESPN, "I'm the king, my wife is the queen, and my daughter is the princess, so we got all three covered." James had suggested that the Knicks should have drafted Dallas Mavericks point guard Dennis Smith Jr. per ESPN.com. LeBron tried to clarify his comments weren't a shot at Knicks rookie point guard Frank Ntilikina per ESPN.com. Cantor said, "We love what we got" on his Twitter account. James reached out to those who just live in the box and for Enes Cantor, who's always got something to say, per ESPN. At the end of the day, Cantor still showed respect to James and believes he's one of the best players in the league. I mess with him a lot, but obviously he's the best player in the league. I respect the guy a lot, but I think right now they are struggling or whatever. I don't even think he's thinking about what I tweet. I think he's worried about his team. Players like Cantor try to get under their opponent's skin any way they can. That doesn't mean Cantor doesn't have respect for James, who he believes is the best player in the game right now. Both players have done so much for their communities and continue to shine light on the NBA on and off the court. Competitors will do whatever it takes to get an edge, and Cantor has proven that time and time again. Except, it's impossible to get an edge on LeBron James. Draymond Green. Draymond Green is extremely loud. He likes to get in your face, create havoc, gain technical fouls, and do whatever he can to protect his team and teammates on a daily basis. Draymond has always rubbed people the wrong way. He's done some questionable things in the league and has said some weird things in the past. He's even tried provoking LeBron James. Green spoke about his bad blood with James. According to Green, the beef he has with James is overblown and never leaves the floor. Green actually said that James and himself are good friends and only compete on the floor. When the game is over, the competition ends, but on the court, it's a whole other thing. Draymond said, "There isn't this beef that people try to make it out to be. Most of LeBron's fights on the court are overblown and not legitimate. It's in the heat of the moment in the game. LeBron is human just like the rest of the players on the court. Everyone wants to be like him and act like him. They'll do whatever they can to get an edge and find a way to make LeBron miss shots. It's jealousy and it's reckless, but that's what some believe they'll need to do to gain an edge over LeBron James. When it's all said and done though, James doesn't have many grudges and seems to always put his teammates first in any situation on the court. He's been known to be a great role model and great teammate for his teammates year in and year out. That's the difference between James and other stars that dominated the league before him. James shows more care and tries to friend everyone without creating drama."